When I select this, I can move both the line art and the color art. So now we're starting to get more of a chair shape with these full drawings. So we have finally made the chairs. With this color card added, we can now see what the rendered image will look like. With all this out of the way, we can now move on to adding pegs to our drawing. Pegs are effectively a way that we sort of move and control drawings, kind of similar to what we did with our references. I'm going to open up the node view since we will be adding quite a few things to this. With all of our individual drawings, if we select them all here and press the buttons Shift, Control and P, we can add an individual peg to every single drawing. With all the pegs added, we now want to choose their pivot points on each drawing. By default, they will be in the center of the screen. Now, if you want to see where the pivot points are, if you select a peg and then click this little rotate button up here, you can see this little blue pivot point that goes slap bang in the center of the screen. I think the peg pivot point can also be moved using the translate tool, but I have a habit of using the rotate tool for some reason. I'm not sure what's caused that. For each chair section, you want to put its pivot point in a sensible place. So for example, for this back section up here, having the pivot point in the middle makes no sense. So I'm going to move it more in the middle of this back section here. I'm going to do the same with these back chair points here. So instead, I might choose to put the pivot points along this base here. And I'm going to do the same with all the other drawings. If I now come down over here to the transform tool, once I select a peg, I can now choose to move its drawing. These pegs allow you to effectively move the drawings in however format or shape you want. You can choose to squash, stretch, and even skew the drawings. However, this will affect the line art. You'll notice if I squash it too much, the line art will get extremely big. One of the great parts with pegs is if you make any mistake on any peg, you can click on the peg and click the R button. This will reset the peg to its default value, but it will still keep its pivot point to where you set it. For each part of the chair, I've added a peg to a somewhat logical place. So for example, down here, I've added the pegs to the base of these parts. For the chair seat, I've put the peg in the middle. And for the legs, I'll put them at the top right here. We now need to create a hierarchy of pegs. This allows us to select groups of sections that we may want to move at one time. Some of the things that we may want to group may be the chair legs and these chair back sections here. So if I select all these pegs and then hit Control P just to create one peg, we can choose one peg that will move all these other pegs. Now remember, these pegs will still have their pivot points here. However, we can set a new pivot point for all these back sections here. So I'm going to move this one roughly in the middle here. Now, once I select this peg, I can choose to move all these back sections if needs. We can also give this section another peg as well. And we'll choose this to hook onto these back sections here. However, I'll move this pivot point back up here. So now we have this back section which moves all of these back parts here, and then one just for all the back poles. I'm going to do the same with the legs as well. Some of you may choose to hierarchy your pegs like this, where you have a peg connected to a drawing and then connected to another peg. As great as this may seem, the problem with this technique is that you can no longer select just the seat of the chair. This peg controls the chair seat and all the legs. Even though you can select the legs themselves, you can no longer select just the chair seat. Now this can be a problem for lots of different scenarios. It may not always be a problem, sometimes you won't need to click on a certain drawing, but for what I'm trying to do today, I don't think that will be very helpful. So I'm gonna leave it connected like this. So now we have a peg that controls all of the bottom section. We have one just for the seat, and we have one for all the legs and all the individual legs. What we've effectively done is split the chair into two sections, giving it a top section and a bottom section. The bottom section selects the chair seat and the chair legs, and the top section selects the back and these sort of back poles here. I'm going to add one more peg to connect all of these together, and for this peg pivot point, I'll put it in the bottom here. This will be done with a lot of not only characters but also props. You'll usually have something called a stage peg. So once you've finished your entire prop and it's all ready to be sent off for review, what you'll usually do is you'll have several pegs at the top which not only combine the whole prop together, but one that is used specifically as a stage peg. So what this stage peg will be, it will have a pivot on the bottom and it will allow you to effectively move the entire prop itself for just positioning and compositing in a scene. Once positioned, that's when you'll move on to the master peg here, which will be used by the animation or maybe any movement you may have. With all these pegs added, we can now see, you can now choose to rotate these little legs. You can choose to move them. Say the chair might break and you might want, say, I don't know, a leg that's fallen on the floor here. But if you do want to undo anything, you've always got that R button to reset any animation you want to undo. One of the last things I'm going to do for this chair, we can add some life to it and give it deformers. Deformers allow us to animate and manipulate certain drawings or even connect them with other deformers and drawings. Let's say I select this drawing here, for example. If I go to the top and select the rigging tool, you get a variety of options of how you want to rig this specific drawing. Now I'm going to choose the envelope mode. You usually use this tool on the outline or outside of a drawing. However, you can use it perfectly well for a bone or limb. I'm going to choose to disable this for now as we only want to see the chair legs. And if I select this, all I need to do is click one point here and then one point at the bottom. This will create a line with 2 pivot points at each end of the line. I'm going to choose to move them somewhat facing inwards here. With this deformer now created, if I move on to the transform tool, we can now see this allows us to manipulate the legs. So we can choose to move it. We can even choose to give it, say, even a walk cycle if we wanted to. There's lots of stuff we can do with this chair leg here, even just with one line deformer on it. If you want to see the line deformers, you simply select the drawing and you click on this green button up here to show selected deformers. This will only show you one specific deformer. If you want to see all the deformers for your rig, you should select show select deformers on the right here. If you no longer want to see them, you can just click off your drawing and then click this button again and all of them will hide. With the chair leg in this position, you may want to undo it. If that is the case, instead of selecting the drawing, you want to select the deformer itself. Once done, this button to the right up here will light up and it is reset current keyframe. This will allow you to reset the leg back into its normal pose. I'm now going to add deformers to the rest of the chair. That concludes it for episode 5. By using pegs, we created a hierarchy system which allows us to animate our prop. Not every prop will need deformers, as sometimes you can just use drawing substitution, so be cautious not to overdo it. I'll see you guys again next episode where we can cover how to package our completed chair.